Thank you very much. And before I am asking you to come to the panel, you know that let me show one slide, one more slide. And this is basically when I am teaching. You know that the sustainability. You know I am using these basically 3 slides. So one is coming back to the 1972, you know that this is the limits to growth. So I just finished the university, you know that, and certainly I wanted to marry. I was in love and I wanted to have kids. And I got the message that this is not a good idea because we have no future. And certainly I was totally unhappy. And I started to teach at the economic university, you know that, and how to convince the students not to have a nice life. Everybody wanted to be a general manager, to have a nice car, you know, that a big family and so on and so forth. And then I was lucky enough, you know, that to meet with David Pearce. He came to a similar meeting like we have today, you know, that in 1994. And I was very lucky, you know, that he summarized in 1 page. What does it mean, you know, that environmental economics? But it's very funny, you know, that, and I would like to reflect a little bit to the Professor Dasgupta, you know, that then circular economy, you know, that it was discovered already. Today, this is a buzzword everywhere. The decoupling, you know, that the Kuznets curves to separate the economic growth from pollution. But the third one is interesting, you know, that because you are speaking about the capital, the stock, instead of the flow. Meanwhile, the third slide is about to replace the stock economy with the flow economy. So instead of using the stock, selling the stock, we have to use only the services. I would like to challenge you a little bit whether is it a contradiction or you can explain me. This is in harmony. But interesting that he was not speaking about, you know, that biodiversity and things like that. Meanwhile, the total economic value were written in the blueprint for green economy already. And it seems to me, at least, and with his discussion, he was a little bit. It was a shine for him, you know, that to say that we are valuing the nature, you know, that we are valuing the different, you know, species with a monetary term. But it was an excuse, you know, that then otherwise people will not understand us. The politician will not understand. But he is not summarized when he was speaking about that. And I am using you not because you came here, you know, that I'm using this slide from you. And basically, I don't know how much I was able to, at least I was able to get the very optimistic part, you know, that then we have been living at both the best and the worst of times. Because our living standard, material living standard, is much higher than ever. You used your slide in the morning, you know, that which convinced us about that. And it means that we have to change, certainly, a lot of things. And we are able to change. And the question, you know, that how we can go further, you know, that, and how we can Maria underlined, we have to act, we have to try. And then the evolution, you know, that will help us to select what is good, what is bad, you know, that, but certainly we cannot foresee the future, but we can change it if we are ready to do that. And this is today I would like to discuss this with you, you know, that, and I would like to invite the panelists, you know, that to come to the stage, you know, that, and certainly I promise I will not speak more. You know that I let you speak about your experiences in your schools. You know that the panelists are basically people from different universities, and they are teaching environmental economics or related topics, sustainability, to students who are in the field of economics. You know that, and some of them certainly very much in favor to make money. And some of them ready to sacrifice or to make a trade-off between the ethical values and money making. So I would like to ask all of you, please take a seat here, you know that, and as I know nobody will have any more slides, I will leave this on the table because here are the list of the participants, you know that, and come. If you are not coming, you know that I am a teacher, so it's 90 minutes lecture. So 3 of us had a chance to speak already, so I will give the floor to the next one. Josef Popp is an academician, you know that, and he's running a doctoral school at the Neumann University, but he is very, very famous agricultural economist, but used to be and still member of the Circular Economy Committee of the Hungarian Academy of Sciences. Please, the floor is yours.
Okay, it's our pleasure to have you here at John Neumann University. We met in the morning as well. Yes, I was listening carefully to your presentation in the afternoon as well. It's a very new doctoral school. We are in the 2nd year. We have 61 students, including English-speaking foreign students as well. I think it's a good number in the 2nd year. And the doctoral school focus on most of the topics discussed here in the morning and in the afternoon. And just to give a list of topics, we focus on ecological footprint, circular economy is a mandatory subject, biocapacity, sustainable development, because the centerpiece of these topics is the European Green New Deal. And that's known by students, and your name is known by most of the students as well. Another issue is that GDP has still the focus we discussed in the morning, and the member states just follow the regulation of the European Commission, and not much is done beyond that by the member states. That's the major problem. I think that's enough. I have 2 questions. I wanted to raise a question in the morning. We ran out of time. My first question is, and it's a sensitive question, what is your approach to birth control introduced in China? How can we stop the rapid population growth in Africa, where the population will grow by 1 billion by 2050? They have 1.1 billion. They will have 2.5 billion people by 2050. Is that an ethical issue or a legal issue, or how can we do something to stop the rapid increase of the global population? And I will raise the second question after that, but I don't think you have to answer my question right now. We can go further.
If you wish, you can.
No, I'll wait.
Later.
Because if I stop, this will deflect the entire thing. And
Yeah, it's better if you answer.
So, okay, fine. All right. It's a perfectly good question to ask, and I should preface by saying that one of the sad things of being a social scientist is that you have to be politically correct, or you're asked to be politically correct, and it's a disgrace. It's a disaster. I mean, I was brought up as a natural scientist, I was a physicist, mathematician, so nothing should be off the table. So of course it should be discussed. And as the first question to ask, of course, the standard argument is, of course, it's an individual right, reproduction, it's a private matter, and so forth. But the moment somebody says something is a private matter, as an economist, I say, are there any externalities? Because if there are, then it's no longer a private matter. It's affecting other people. So you search for externalities and see if there are visible externalities or something like that. Then. And the one reason I had this, where is that globe, that NY upon alpha globe? You know, there was, anyway. So one of the key inequalities in the review was total GDP divided by an efficiency parameter.
The inequality.
Right? Where was this? That's it. That's the one. Yeah. That's it. That's the diagram. And if you see the inequality in the globe, as it were, that in some sense sums up the review. The left-hand side is the demand we are making on the biosphere, and the right-hand side is the supply, the regenerative rate, the supply, the yield of the biosphere seen as a renewable resource. Of course, it is all in aggregate form, total aggregate form, but if you want to not think in terms of aggregate, you have a whole bunch of inequalities depending on the service or resource in question, so that's not an important issue. Now, what does that say? It's saying, you ask yourself, what is the footprint? How do you measure the footprint? So it will be human activity divided by the amount of resource you need per unit of human activity. That's a sort of definitional. And you compare that with the regenerative rate. Okay. And that's what this is. And if you measure human activity in terms of GDP, global GDP, that's the only thing I can think of. You might say there is more human activity than is measured in human. Well, then that will be a multiple of, and so you can rescale the thing and do the same. But the idea is to see, and what the excess demand we make of nature is reflected in the inequality here. Okay, so we have three parameters defining the demand. One is population, the other is per capita income. So like that's because the multiple is total income or output, divided by alpha, the efficiency parameter. So if you have three, then it seems reasonable to study each and see which is the leverage. If there is, the left-hand side exceeds the right-hand side, either you have to reduce the left-hand side if you want sustainability, balancing, or try and coax nature into being more productive and raise the right-hand side. That's investment in nature, etc. And so forth. So if you're concentrating on the left-hand side to reduce the footprint, one of the targets is, one factors is n, but it's never discussed. Nobody wants to reduce small y, so we have a problem. All the action must be on alpha, the efficiency with which we transform. Otherwise, you can't bring the two into balance. So that is one reason I put it in this form, because it seems the entire literature has been to say n must be what it is, or what it's going to be. Y has to grow, because that's the purpose of economic development. So therefore, alpha has to rise sufficiently fast, tame the left-hand side, and bring it into equality. So the question is, how do we do that? And the answer is, of course, technological progress or institutional. So this is just literally a way of discussing this matter. And that if there are three parameters going, why are we not supposed to look at one of the parameters? Now, given the inequality, tell us one thing immediately, that at the margin, an increase in n has externalities, because there is an inequality here, and the externality means it's increasing the inequality. And the externality is about the future, because you're eating more into that. Now, of course, you can say equally about small y. It goes without saying, because n and y are symmetrical in that the left-hand side. So you could carry the discussion in terms of small y, or you could carry the discussion in terms of capital N, or you can discuss both. And of course, you discuss alpha too, goes without saying. Institutional reforms and so forth, pricing of natural capital, so on and so forth, which will raise alpha. So that's the context in which I was interested in population, goes without saying. And given the inequality, it means at the margin, n has an externality. Increasing in n has an externality because at the margin, it exacerbates the inequality. And therefore, procreation is not necessarily, is no longer, in my judgment, a private matter. Now, you can still say, all right, it may not be a private matter, but you should make it private. In other words, it's hands off. And that's an answer, and that's okay. All I was concerned about in my review, and in the latest book also, is just to point out that to think that an additional birth doesn't have externalities is false. Now you can, of course, dismiss that externality and say it doesn't matter. But then you have to argue as to why that externality doesn't matter, whereas what I eat, the small y, does matter. So that's the first line of attack. The second point, and that really brings me to the heart of it, I don't think fertility decisions, just like in consumption decisions, is an entirely private matter, in the sense that we're influenced by our community, the world we live in. Now, the community could be, in old days, it would have been the village. But today, the community includes outside influences because we see other lifestyles through TV, internet, and so forth. So it's up to you to decide what a community means. But our actions are socially embedded. There's plenty of evidence of that on the consumption side. Certainly in what we wear. I mean, look at the homogeneity of what we wear. Lack of heterogeneity, if you like, trousers for all the men, and so forth, shows that how we mimic each other. We don't say we are mimicking. We simply say that's what we do. It's custom. But the fact is we do align ourselves. And that's exactly right. We are social animals. To pretend that we're egotistical maniacs is just rubbish. We are embedded in our cultures, and we move with the culture can vary, of course, but it moves with some lags maybe, but it moves as a group. So given that, in consumption we see that, there's a lot of evidence of that, of homogeneity of consumption patterns. And in fertility behavior, there's a very, very nice, very interesting literature, empirical literature that has grown to show how fertility decisions are socially embedded. There's just marvelous examples of it. One classic example, which now is well known, even the World Bank has recognized, was cable TV was introduced into India in a staggered form across the states. There are about 20 states, let's say, or 25 states in India. So there were, it was entered in, once it was ratified at the federal level, how it was adopted depended on the timing. And what the data shows is that fertility rates declined stepwise with the introduction of cable TV. That's a very nice natural experiment showing how the influence of outside on fertility behavior. It just followed exactly as the pattern would be. To me, it was not a surprise, because I do believe that we are social animals. And fertility is very much, I come from a world in which, of course, wives are told, by the mother-in-law, you haven't given me a grandson, come on. So she never was, the mother-in-law was never told that the gender is dictated by the son, not by the daughter-in-law, but never mind. The daughter-in-law was always the scapegoat for the gender of the offspring. But the point I'm trying to get at is that these are all socially embedded decisions. And so in a sense, although we think of this as a very private matter and very sensitive, it should not be. It's not. It's not a private matter because we choose not to make it a private matter. We chose to mimic. We all do. And it's just a plethora of empirical literature on fertility rates being socially embedded, and we can discuss that at some length. So nobody is being insulted. So in a way, in my book, the recent book that I've just now written, I have a whole chapter on the social embedded decision-making, particularly fertility and consumption there too. But I take the consumption side from the richer world and the fertility behavior from the poorer world. Now, what does this amount to? So let me conclude by giving you one example of where we go wrong in terms of assigning causality. So in a very famous paper, published in 1994, I think, by Lance Pritchard, brilliant guy. He did marvelous work. What he did was he regressed. From questionnaires, you can determine the wanted fertility rate You ask women or families, if you go back into time, how many children did you want to have, and so forth and how. So you get data of what's called wanted fertility rate, okay? And you regress that against realized fertilities. And you found a very strong correlation between that. And what across societies, cultures, in its sample. And the implication was that it responds to demand for children. So what's the problem? Societies which have high fertility rates because there is a greater desire for children. But now, suppose you think in terms of socially embedded preferences, is the way I'm doing, and just accept from me for the moment that there is a good deal of evidence that they are socially embedded. Then it's no truer to say that fertility rates are high in those places where it's high because people there in those places demand more children, than it is to say that people demand more children in those places where fertility rates are high because fertility rates are high. So the causality is completely turned around. And what you are really looking at is equilibrium conditions. So society, and it's a very nice thing to be able to recognize, because it says that we could get stuck in an equilibrium mode of behavior, because each is looking into the neighbors. And they might all agree that they would all be better off if they did something else. But no individual has the incentive to do that something else, because either you do it together or you don't do it. So it's a standard problem of coordination. It's a coordination problem. It's not a prisoner's dilemma game. It's a coordination game. You are stuck in an equilibrium which you're worse off than you would be if you were at another equilibrium. But in each equilibrium, you're doing as best as you can, and you're not complaining. So there's a huge set of things to be discussed here, but the first thing you can say is it dispels the idea of cultural differences in fertility. And now in my book, I have a whole chapter giving you evidence. Latin America, for example, the fertility rate has gone down to about 1.8, I think, or less than that, sorry. Latin America, which is predominantly Roman Catholic. So what am I to say about that? I think the power of our neighbors is very powerful, and we forget that. And the power is a good one because we are social animals. We do care about what others think of us and so forth. And we can easily think of situations where I'm suggesting that nobody loses necessarily. It does require some, because you could get stuck in a wrong equilibrium, goes without saying, and find ways of persuasion whereby you move. But I think we underestimate our tendency in the economics textbooks is to think of the human individual as an egotist. And that's a serious mistake. And I think as a basis, we are not that. We would not be human if we were. And that has implications for public policy. So nudging may be much more important than we think it is. And the nudging usually comes from our elders, or tribal chieftains, or whatever. I don't know how these things work. Or it could be vocal women in a community, say, that will change our way. But that's how I see things.
Tekla Szép from Miskolc University,
Thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you for the invite. Okay, so if we go back to the starting point, how do we teach sustainability? What the students get? What do they feel about it? Maybe what's the problem? How we can raise more these issues? First, when we got this question from Professor Kerekes, I was thinking about that. What would be the right answer? So yesterday I had class, both in English and in Hungarian, environmental economics, and I asked the students what do they study basically, how other professors, my colleagues, are introducing the sustainability, whether it is part of the curricula or it's not, and they said clearly no. okay, it's a straight answer, but I really trust my colleagues, so I didn't give up. And I asked them further, and then it came out that they learn a lot. They learn many and study many parts of the sustainability, even if they don't mention that it's part of the sustainability. So, for example, they are really learn a lot how to make shorter the supply chains, why we should consume local products. They learn a lot about ESG. Maybe the professors or our colleagues don't really emphasize how do they come together. So I still believe that this really structural thinking and systematic thinking is still missing from our curriculums, but they learn many parts of the sustainability. And hopefully in our classes, in environmental economics, ecological economics, all of these mosaic and pieces come together. And I also have an impression that in the last 10 or 15 years, the students changed a lot. So now they know much more. They are really interested. They are worrying about the future, and they are really open to talk about it. So, and I think now really we see how the generations are changing. So I think I'm quite optimistic with the sustainability. What do they know? And it's a completely different generation, and they know the problems, and they want to fix the problems. Of course, in different ways, but it is in their head. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Tekla. Yes, Marian Szabó, you know that from the Technical University. Basically, the Miskolc University has a techie background, you know that, so they are probably having similar, at least, attitudes from the student side, because majority of them near to the industry.
Yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity to being here. And I will start with it. BME, Budapest University of Technology and Economics, is the biggest technical university in Hungary, with 20,000 students. And I was just thinking about that our department usually teach around 2,000 students per semester, including engineering students and also economic students. And what we can see that concerning the technical part and those students, they believe that they are game changers and system changers, and I think that's good. One of the most popular elective course for a long decade actually is the history of Hungarian investors. So they trying to believe that they will make change, and I think it's really important. 15 years ago, we have started a program. It's called a Green Certificate, that engineer students can actually gather 5 subjects from the portfolio of our department, and they are given this certificate, and actually it empowers them to show that they have these competencies. Regarding the economic students, we have 2 approaches. Actually, we run programs where we put emphasis on environmental economics and also circular economy and sustainable resource management. And also, and I think it's a really good news for our department that during the last 10 years, other economic programs like MBA or management and leadership became actually open to incorporate our subjects into that program, because then we can reach our impact also. And I totally agree with Tekla that we need new studying methods, actually challenge-based learning or those kind of experiences where they can think about narratives. And that relates to Maria's presentation, that we have to open their mindset and how they can actually reach behavior changes. And since 2 years, we started a new course. It's within the engineering management program, which is actually industrial engineering. But yeah, at BME we call this program, or in Hungary, this like that. And it's about sustainable business modeling practice. And yeah, it's about 8 students have been enrolled into this program. And of course, if we compare with the size of the university, then yeah, it's challenging. But actually, during this class, they gather information regarding sustainable resource management, relation of climate and business, and the most important thing that they are working in groups and working with businesses with a packaging free shop, and the other one is education and reuse center of Budapest, and they really appreciate that, and they are really exciting how they come up with new solutions, and yeah, they are assessing the business model of these organizations, and we hope that finally they can provide valuable new ideas for these organizations, and later on perhaps the entrepreneurial skills can be strengthened. Small step, but we received that feedback that it's valuable, so we are thinking about that how we can actually enlarge this kind of initiatives in such rigid system, what we have in academia and in the university. But yeah, we have to start somehow, and that's how we are following the path. Thank you.
Zsuzsa Győri, you know that, who is teaching in the biggest competitor of Corvinus, in the Budapest Business School, but she educated from Corvinus and wrote her PhD about business ethics. So maybe that she is the soft side of the issue.
Yeah, thank you. It's great to be here with you today. So thank you for the invitation. Yeah, I represent the Budapest University of Economics and Business, and I teach courses in business ethics and responsible and sustainable company. And yeah, we have more than 18,000 students in different business disciplines. And I think that our biggest challenge is that I cannot say, or we cannot define, where are we at the scale of perfectionism and greenwashing, which was mentioned by Professor Csutora. So, yeah, on the other hand, I agree with you that we have some great achievements. Sustainability is a trendy topic, is a buzzword regarding applications or regarding international accreditations like the AACSB, where sustainability is a separated discipline and a separated standard as well. Our university is a champion of the PRIME, where the whole organization is about the integration of sustainability in business programs at the business schools. And yeah, we can claim that I think that in Hungary there aren't any economics program without teaching sustainability. For example, at our university from the 1st of August we will have a new department of sustainability. It also an achievement. It means, I hope, that sustainability will feature more prominently in the education than before. And it appears in the research, in the third mission, and in the student life as well. We have some very responsible and environmentally conscious students. They write their theses, their PhD dissertations about sustainability, and yeah, it's great to work with them as a teacher. But on the other hand, we can admit that most of the students and the teachers from other economics disciplines consider sustainability as yeah, it's interesting and it's very topical, trendy, but not as important as profit maximization, not as important as the growth of GDP. So it cannot be a real competitor of the mainstream economics in the students' life, in the education of the students. And unfortunately, some of our students did not understand natural sciences in the secondary school either. So that is why they are at a business school, because they thought that, oh, here is a school where I don't have to deal with these too serious and difficult topics anymore. I don't think that it's their responsibility. It's the responsibility of the economic system and the teaching methods regarding natural sciences. But we have to admit that this is the situation till they are at the university, until we try to teach them about sustainability and about the natural boundaries and the do not economics and everything. And for the last, I'm disappointed because I think that the European Union's regulations regarding the European New Green Deal gave us a hope about a paradigm shift or about a change in the mainstream attitude. And now the EU stopped the clock because of, or for the sake of achieving competitiveness. So I don't know what to tell the students now about all these things. And in the last 2 months, I was interviewed by 2 different PhD students from other prime universities, from the UK and from Brazil. And after giving the answers for their questions, I asked them about their experience. And I had to realize that it's not a Hungarian problem or it's not a European problem, but it's a problem. These challenges are everywhere at the business schools. So yeah, I'm not very, very positive or optimistic now about these issues. Sorry to say it.
Thank you very much. And the last one will be Antal Kovács, who is representing our school.
Thank you very much, Sándor. I teach environmental economics and related subjects in this center, and I'm probably one of the youngest students of Professor Kerekes. And also I have to mention Zsuzsana Szerényi, professor, who was my tutor during my doctoral years. And when we had the first discussion, I asked her what her central topic of research was, and she answered, yes, this was valuation of the environment, of environmental goods and services. And I didn't understand very much of that, but it remained in my mind, and it stuck to my mind, and I found it extremely interesting later, because I thought, what was the fundamental reason I came to this profession? Because originally my first degree was engineering. So I'm a structural engineering, lots of mathematics, data, figures, logical thinking, and so forth from Technical University of Budapest. And my second degree was business and business administration, and that's where I first encountered economics, economic thinking, and management sciences, related management sciences. There were 2 subjects I hated. One was marketing, and the other was accounting. But I was forced to learn these, and I finally found that was the point when I understood how the world goes around, and what is the motivation, how business actors think, what's the major motivation behind business activity and development and being innovative. And so I worked many years in private equity and venture capital, and later years I spent in business, focusing on business opportunities that was related to sustainable fields like renewable energy, energy efficiency, and so forth. But I found that was very much policy driven. Something was wrong. Something was distorted. So some people could make money who had a good sense of what policy would do, what the direction of policy making was. Some other people could not make money because they didn't have a sense, or they didn't have the right connections to those who were deciding. So I said, I have to learn about this. So I decided to apply for the doctoral school, and I wanted to learn what all this is about. And the point which you raised in the morning, and you a little bit touched up on this afternoon, was why I said pricing and valuing nature was so important, is that after some years of practicing and making research in this field, I find that our goal is to help bringing the dynamics of economic activity as little or less distorted as possible. It will be always distorted. But if we try to make an influence on these processes which make the economics, the dynamics of an economy distorted, and we try to reduce it by better pricing methodologies or generating more data which are better quality data, and we generate more information, more reliable information, which are underlined by realities, then we can help to ease this kind of distortion. So we cannot be perfectionist. We will never get there, but at least to understand some of the dynamics which you mentioned this morning and this afternoon, we at least can contribute to some extent. So these are my thoughts. Thank you.
Okay. So because this late evening time already, let me give you the microphone, but before I would like to joke a little bit, if you don't mind. So you just published the report in 2021, and from that time the UK has a almost zero growth economy. Is it the effect of your paper? And basically, I don't know whether the initiator, the UK Treasury Department, is happy, or they are not so happy with the result what you have achieved.
That's beautiful, very lovely observation. No, of course not. I have no idea. There's a couple of points I'd like to make in response to this question to give a sense of what happened to the review. I really don't think it has influenced Treasury at all. I've seen no reason to believe it. It is interesting that it would be the Treasury which commissioned the review, and that says something about the culture. I think something positive about the culture in Whitehall. But I don't think it has influenced them. I wouldn't even know how it should influence them, because I don't know how the Treasury works, what kind of issues crop up on a daily basis, what are the urgent things, and so forth. I couldn't tell. I'm an outsider. So that's point number one. The only other thing is just a pure observation, and it's interesting, at least to me. When the review was published, the Treasury was very, very far-sighted and kept my team for an additional 10 months after the publication. So it went to the calendar year of 2021, right to the end. The idea was that the Treasury team because they have these facilities, they can create interest and discussion around the thing. And they were very active. I took part in, this was COVID years. I spent most of my time on Zoom with various types of groups. And when I say groups, I mean groups. Indigenous populations, CEOs of companies, bank presidents, you name the group, politicians, various types. I mean, literally, you name it, and I'll be able to give you, I'll probably say, yes, I met that group on Zoom, because they wanted to ask questions and so forth. There was one group missing. Can you guess? Nope. I had lots of discussions with the World Bank chief, IMF heads and so forth. The one group that was missing was economics professors. Not one. I had no telephone. Business schools, yes. I'm Harvard's, the dean of the business school, MIT's, Austin's. They had a collective Zoom. So there was some coordination there as well, instead of having to see. But not single economics department. So that says something.
Yeah, but I have a question related to this, So if I go back, that I really appreciate the UK, that the Treasury Department, the government, Tony Blair, who initiated the Stern report. But when the Stern report has been published, he got a lot of critics from economists. Yes. So, the Nobel Prize winner, he was not that time, Nordhaus, the Weizmann and others criticized him very much. Your paper were accepted more than the Stern report. What is the reason? What do you think? If it is...
That's very hard for me to say. I mean, I haven't really read the Stern review.
But it's probably true.
Yes, I think so. I haven't had any criticism at all, even from economists or anybody else. No, that's for sure. I like to think that maybe I got it right. So that might be the reason. But that's the facile answer. That's not correct. I think the Stern review got really hit by Nordhaus and Weizmann. They wrote two very critical papers in the, I can't remember which American journal, on many other things probably, but the one which struck me as significant was Stern, they claimed that you don't discount future because it's in the future, on grounds that it's in the future. You may discount future income relative to today's income, but that's because you have a projection in which they are richer than the future than we are now, and therefore you give them a smaller weight at the margin, increase in there. So that was the argument. And Nordhaus and others were very critical of that because the market data was conflicting it, or the social discount rate governments used was not consistent with that. I think he got nailed on that one. I have some sympathy with it for a very different reason. And that's, again, I'm addressing students, so it's important. I think one of the things, one of the people that your generation should read from time to time are the writings of the late Jalin Koopmans. I don't know if the name means anything to you. Koopmans, K-O-O-P, Koopmans, M-A-N-S. He was a giant of the economy. He won a Nobel Prize in his early years. He was a professor at Yale. Now, what he did in his writings, which I took away when I was a graduate student, was he wanted to argue that no ethical principle should be held as sacrosanct, because you never know what it might run into. It might run against another ethical principle that you didn't even know you had, but you now feel that if some issue crops up where it conflicts. Now, it's a profound notion because it tells us to be pragmatic. Now, that's a horrible thing to say, that pragmatism with ethical issues. And the answer is yes, it should be on that, because you don't know what you confront. Our ethics is guided by the possible as well as our notion of the desirable. And we usually look for a tangency between the two when we describe these welfare economic problems. So you need to look at both the possible and the ethical. And since you don't know what the possible is necessarily, you shouldn't be committed to any ethical principle. I think it's a very sound principle, and it has a philosophical counterpart. It's called pragmatism. I don't know if those of you who have delved into the philosophical literature, you'll find pragmatism as... Frank Ramsey was a pragmatist. There's a book on pragmatism of who the great pragmatists were. And so their idea really was that there is no... in some deep sense, they will say there are no first ethical principles. There are principles you carry in your head, things that you feel are desirable, things that you feel are undesirable. But at the end of the day, what you do is you find a conflicting situation and then you make up your mind to see whether doing this passes the smell test or whether it doesn't, and so forth. And you sort of veer your way through life by adjusting your actions to meet with things that on balance look right to you. And that's, at least to me, it sounds a very, a very realistic view of how we conduct ourselves. And it's nice to know that there are deep philosophers who subscribe to that. That's the only reason I'm mentioning it. So I think, to get back to Stern, his mistake was to insist on a principle which sounds very nice. But here is why it's an unsound principle. Kenneth Arrow, as usual, gave the answer. No, it was Koopmans. Sorry, Koopmans. Koopmans wrote the following kind of thing. Suppose you say you do not wish to discount future because, today versus tomorrow and so forth there. And he pointed out, however, that capital, if invested wisely, has a positive return. In other words, there's a productivity of capital, social productivity. But that productivity means that there is an arrow of time. Tomorrow is not the same as today, because you plant the seed today and tomorrow the wheat is ready for eating. So the arrow of time already gives the asymmetry, and if you deny that, but pretend that there is no asymmetry, you may run into paradoxes. So here is his paradox. He says, well, suppose the rate of return is 2% in investment, and you don't want to discount the future. Then, of course, you say, aha, I'm not going to consume because, well, I'll consume very little. You cut down consumption like crazy because the loss is made up by tomorrow's gain. And remember, you're not discounting tomorrow. Okay? So you keep on cutting down till you're nearly starvation, because there's tomorrow. Then comes tomorrow. Again, you cut down because you remember yesterday is finished. Now you're looking at the future. And again, you cut it down. So Koopmans' paradox was that this would make you never consume other than the bare minimum. You accumulate because there's a hell of a lot of future out there. But you'll never make use of that savings, which is, of course, very inefficient. Now, that's a great argument, you've got to admit. And when I first remember reading it as a graduate student, I thought it was devastatingly clever. Anyway, that's why what got Nordhaus and others annoyed. Nordhaus was a colleague of Koopmans at Yale. That may have some bearing on it. But it was a mistake on Stern's viewpoint. He just consulted a couple of philosophers who said, no, you shouldn't discount the future.
Okay. So our time is almost up, but I would like to give you the chance if you wish to ask. Yes. Because she's a master student in order to... Can you come, because otherwise it will be not recorded. She's from Pakistan, yeah. She wrote an article already and we published it.
Thank you, sir. It's an honor to be here and learn from you. From the discussion that we have, my question is about your opinion or approach to degrowth or kind of a regrowth? Because given our discussion about the population, we might have population growth in Africa or Asia, but that child's carbon footprint can be lower than from someone living in Europe. And when we talk about the demand and services of this natural system, he might have a less demand than someone living here. So how do you see this paradigm, and how do you, what's your opinion about the degrowth or the regrowth, or maybe kind of some changes in our industrial policy? Because right now I'm a very new researcher of industrial policy, and I read Danny Roderick and Ha-Joon Chang, and there is kind of, some kind of opinion that we should shift our industrial policy from manufacturing to services and all. So yeah, my question is about your opinion regarding degrowth and zero growth, or maybe regrowth in some ways. Thank you.
I can be very brief on this.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you for asking. I can be very brief on that. I really don't have very much of a view on this, largely because I think these broad-based visions of degrowth don't mean very much. I like to look at distortions and try and remove distortions and then see how it goes, rather than thinking of a goal. So that's how I would. I just don't have a feel for the question. I see that, the ny divided by alpha. The y can't keep on increasing, or ny can't keep on increasing, that's for sure. But that doesn't tell me, that's equivalent to saying we should have degrowth. But how you bring it about, what the costs are, and what the alternative possibilities are, is something we ought to be discussing at length. And most of people are discussing it. That's how we do discuss it, rather than have a sort of a prescription, degrowth. Because there are contending issues here, and contending the distribution across, which is the point that you were making, distribution across regions. I mean, for example, in Africa, African footprint, global footprint on Africa, for Africans, is negligible, because it's about 4% of global GDP, the whole of Africa. That's not really a big deal. It's not but if you look at African ecosystems, then things are different, because a lot of damage is being done there. Now, one of the reasons the damage is being done is because they want to export primary products, because there's a demand for that. So you then have to ask ourselves, are the export prices too low? And I would argue they are too low. Africans ought to be charging more for their primary products, because there are externalities involved within Africa, and so forth. So I'm just hinting at the deeper questions that arise associated with the issue that you're raising.
Either curious if you are coming.
Yeah, of course. So I would have many questions, but trying to limit myself to only one. So concentrating on your accounting scheme and your thinking logic constructing a production function, if I understand well, then you have a global approach. You're thinking on a global scale, which is quite understandable. We have just one planet. Putting aside Elon Musk's thought, climate change, natural resource depletion, the loss in biodiversity are global problems and causing global problems. On the other hand, if we zoom in the global map, in the world map, we see huge regional differences. But purely natural conditions like the biocapacity, raw material usage and consumption, waste and emissions, and so on. So from this point of view, it would be justified to take into account these huge regional differences. On the other hand, dealing with the global problems and the problems on this global scale, it is not so justified. Should it take into account, or should we take into account these differences, and how your approach, this production function, construction can consider these differences?
Thank you very much again. You asked very, very, very good questions. This is excellent. I've avoided it because it's if you start talking regionally, then there'll be regional details I have to produce, and I don't have them necessarily, or it'll be very boring for people to listen to, what's going on in North America or something. And in any case, I don't have. There are regional footprints that have been estimated. In fact, that's happening. So it's not uniform, goes without saying. And also the reason I like to work for conversational purposes, discussion and lectures, the global thing, is that you can then ignore trade because it washes out in the aggregate. And trade creates the problem in the sense of hiding differences and footprints. And so that's one reason it's easier to talk, it's of the global economy. Turning to the local economy, yes, of course, regionally there are huge disparities. There's disparities in footprints in Africa versus footprints. But then you have to be careful. How much of that footprint is due to external demand? And there, as I was just hinting, one thing that strikes me is that we in the West pay too little for the primary products we import. And the reason we pay too little is that the externalities that are involved are not priced. Take shrimps. Shrimps is a good example. You import shrimps from Sri Lanka, and the price we pay is less because there's a huge amount of external damage taking place across shrimp farms in Sri Lanka. And that's not being internalized by Sri Lankans. That's the problem. And so, you might say that's really the problem of the Sri Lankan government, and you would be right. But it's worth pointing out to them that you are actually transferring wealth out of Sri Lanka to the importing country. Because if they're underpricing the stuff, which they are, that's equivalent to saying wealth is being transferred from the exporting country to the importing country. Now, if you put it that way, it looks absolutely shocking. A poor country is subsidizing consumers, usually the richer types who we have Sri Lankan shrimps in the UK, US, and so forth. But that's true. That's exactly right. And that's why economics is such a powerful, in my judgment, such a powerful tool to expose these hidden inequities in trade and international relationships and so forth. I just thought I'd give you one example of how the underpricing is equivalent to wealth transfer in the wrong direction. In the sense of
I'm afraid, that everything which is good should be finished. And sorry for those who has no chance to ask. The good news that tomorrow in the Academy of Sciences building there is another meeting with Professor Dasgupta. So you can come and you can visit a beautiful building as well, those who are not familiar with it. And I would like to thank the possibility, that, and we're really privileged that you visited us, that it is a great contribution to our education. And certainly I would like to thank for Brigitta, Hidvégine, Paulai Brigitta, and János Zlinski, who without them it would not happen because they were so generous that they gave this evening to us, that for free. Maybe that I will need to pay something for them later on. Who knows? That no free lunch. At least this is the economic theory, and that. And I thank a lot for the panelists. And sorry, that we knew that we will have limited time. That this is not always the case, but it was really great to meet with all of you, and I would like to thank to Professor Toja, that, and the doctoral school as well, because they are the ones who are paying the hospitality tonight. But still, you can get some food outside. That don't hesitate to consume it. Otherwise, this will be a waste, food waste, which is totally against to the sustainability. So thank you very much for you and for the panelists. I show what you have to do, and thank you for the open answers, that, and we really enjoyed very much your openness, that, and we wish you great successes in the future. Don't stop to do that. It helps us. And the good news that you will get a book. And at least that I am the one who is chairing this session, and I would like to ask him to sign it for me. That I am always asking him to work. Okay, but you will get the book if you are signed. The participation list. You will get it. This is really very nice and a little bit shorter than the original paper. Maybe that you will enjoy it, and it is written in Hungarian. So thank you for everybody. But this is the end of the official part. That we still have the possibility to speak with each other and enjoy the life. And I thanks for the students for coming. That several universities are represented here. That, and this is very rare opportunity for us.